Okay, from the previous video, you have seen how to pass array to methods and how to use them, and what are the changes that a method can affect the value of your array and your array elements. Okay, so we're done now with all the refreshments now of the topics that you have with programming one. Okay, so all of those going to be reviewed from the control statements to the looping statements, the arrays, and the methods. You should have by this time a strong foundation for that. So anyway, karon pa ta magsugod o sa ato ang pang programming 2 na dyan nga topic, and which is for the first topic will be our multi-dimensional arrays or the matrices. So if we are already familiar, and I know you have gone through this during your high school mathematics, no? Matrices, no? Naka-table ng mga values. Okay, so from the previous array lesson, we only have one-dimensional array, no? Isa lang siya ka-straight, nakalinya lang, isa lang kalinya ang iyahang values. So, diri kang multi-dimensional, from the name itself, we will deal with a 2D, two-dimensional array. So, for this time, we now have a columns and rows of values inside our arrays. Okay, so multidimensional arrays with two dimensions are often used to represent tables of values consisting of information arranged in rows and columns. And to identify a particular table element, we must specify two indices. Okay, no? Kay sa one-dimensional, isa lang man to siya ka-index. Kay one-dimensional lang man siya, naka-straight raman iyahang values. Karon kay na naman tayo rows and columns, so we must specify also two indices or two indexes. Okay, so we now have an index for our row and we have an index for our column. But by convention, the first identifies the elements row and the second is column. Okay. Arrays that require two indices to identify a particular element are called two-dimensional arrays. Now, what multi-dimensional arrays can have more than two dimensions. No, dili lang siya nga we have two columns lang, two rows ra pud siya kahit two-dimensional. It can have more than two. But Java does not support multidimensional arrays directly, but it does allow you to specify one-dimensional arrays whose elements are also one-dimensional arrays, thus achieving the same effect. And in general, an array with m rows and n columns is called an m by n array. Okay? So, dili siya gina-support ni Java directly nga pwede ka mag-import lang or built-in siya daan kang Java. Thus, ang iyang ginahimo ni Java is tinamban niya nga ang katong mga one dimension iyahang i-combine para mahimo siyang multi-dimensional. Okay? So, here in this figure, we have a two-dimensional array with three rows and four columns. Okay, so this is now how you refer to an array element nga naka of our two-dimensional array. Okay, so we have here three rows. So always basta programming kani always start from zero. So we have row. So we have here row 0, row 1, row 2, and then we have column 0, column 1, column 2, and column 3. Okay, now we have here, in specifying each of these elements, we now have to specify two indices. Okay, so si A kini siya nga element nga nakabutang diri ang position sa atong array has an index value of A is the name of our array and then iyahang row index which is 0 and then iyahang column index which is also 0. And the next for this row is 0, 1. So 0, row 0 and column 1. Ano siya yung pasabot. And we have here row 0, column 2, row 0, column 3. And so with this row and so forth. Okay, so always remember, ang una is the row index. And the second index that you have to specify is for the column index. Okay? So, mo lang na ilang kahiyan. Kay two-dimensional naman ta na column o na po yung row. Okay? So, arrays of one-dimensional arrays. So, like one-dimensional arrays, multi-dimensional arrays can be initialized with array initializers and declarations. And a two-dimensional array B with two rows and two columns could be declared and initialized with nested array initializers as follow. Okay, so diba with the one-dimensional array, we can specify or declare or initialize array values using the curly braces. So, saan mo siya pag-initialize with the two-dimensional is by this. Okay, so ihang pasabot ani, each naka-contain sa curly brace is a row. So, this is row 0. Next brace is now our row 1. So each naka-enclose sa atong curly braces are the rows of each, represents each row of our 2D, two-dimensional array. And then, ang sunod ana niya, so this one is on the row 0, column 1. And this one is on the row 0, column 2. And so with this one, this is on row 1, column 1, and row 1, column 2. Okay, row 1, column 0, row 1, column 1. Start na data from 0. This one also, column 0, and this one is column 1. Okay, so how do we do that? In the manner in which dimensional arrays are represented makes them quite flexible. In fact, the lengths of the arrows in array B are not required to be the same. Okay, so a two-dimensional array is made up of one-dimensional arrays di ay. Okay, so di ba kang one-dimensional arrays, ing ani lang to, isa lang ani lang atong pag-initialize. But kang 2D, it's a collection of one-dimensional arrays. Okay, so giingana lang na siya pag tinambad ni Java. Okay, so let's have it in code. So let's create a class. Uh, multi oh, ano pa existing? Let's name it as array 2D. Place. Okay, and then my main method. Okay, so we will now initialize our 2D array. So we will have an integer array. So kung kang one-dimensional, isa lang iyahang square brackets no. So kang 2D, duha na po iya. And then let's name our array as empty array, multi-dimensional array. And then we'll have initial values. Inside this curly brace are the rows enclosed in another inside curly braces. So let's have here one, two, and then three, four. Okay, now let's traverse on the array. Traverse meaning we will go through each of the array elements, no? Ang tawag na to is traverse, no? Kaya mo travel siya on each of the values inside sa inyong array. Okay, so to display the values inside our two-dimensional array, we will create another method, public static, do not forget, because we will call it in a static method, our main. Public static void, let's name it as display array.
Kasunod lagi ko ako, dili ko kasunod.
Sa
Wala internet ako, hinay ka ano. Hindi ka makasunod. Cover na.
Okay, so parehas lang gihapon kang so kung unsa atong ipasa mo pud ang atong i-parameter diri. So kay two-dimensional array man atong i-receive, so atong i-declare diri is naka two-dimensional pud siya, no? And then we will name it as A. Okay? Okay, so what we're going to do in this method is we will just display what is inside our array. Now, there would be a difference compared with how we displayed our array values sa one-dimensional natong array, no? Kay isa lang man to siya ka for statement. Now, kay we have, remember, we have already columns and rows for the multidimensional. It means that we have to traverse through its rows and columns. So dili lang siya isa ka direction, two direction na siya, na siya horizontal and also vertical. So what we are going to do is we will look first through the rows. Okay, so we will look through the rows. Okay, so for that, we will have a for statement. Okay, so we will name our initial, our counter variable to row para dili mo maglibog. Okay, so this for statement is for traversing to each row in our multidimensional array. Okay, so let's initialize it to 0 and that it should be less than our array's length. Okay, your array's length, the length of your um, multidimensional array is the number of rows it has. Okay, so kung pila na kabuok iyahang row, mo na siya iyahang length. Okay, so for this one, na siya 2 nga length. Pero kung may taog pila yung dimension, may yung taog 2 by 2. No, 2 by 2 ang ato ang sukod sa ato ang dimension sa atong array. Kay it has 2 rows and 2 columns. Okay, that's why 2 by 2. Okay, mo to yung ingon nga m by n row. N by m atong array. N by n. Okay, so row and then we will increment our row plus plus so that it would go after a row, mo-traverse na po siya sa second row, incremented by 1. Now, in our row, okay, kitanta mo ha para ma-picture out ninyo. Okay, here sa ato ang multidimensional array, first, imo ang travel sa imuhang pag-traverse through the array is first, imuhang i-select ang row. Okay, so kini. So sa imong sulod pod sa row naa kay elements in columns. So after nimo ni traverse na ang row, imo na pod siyang isa-isahon by column. So muna ka diri kang column 0, column 1, column 2, and then column 3. And that's the time nga kung humana siya sa length sa imuhang row, sa imong columns, kung pila ka ba imong columns, that's the time nga usa pa siya mo proceed to the next row. And then, kung na ka sa next row, traverse na pud ka through the columns of the current row. So, diri na pud ka, row 1, column 0, row 1, column 1, and row 1, column 2, row 1, and column 3, according to the length of your current row. And then, nasapat dahil to, mag-increment ang ato ang row plus plus, and so on. No, it will traverse again through each of its column. Okay, so let's go back. Okay, so nanatay for statement for the incremental of our row for traversing our rows. Now, sa ganito, pag nanata sa ato ang row mo, traverse na punta through each column. Okay, so for and then we will now have another initial variable. We will call it column para dili mo malibog. Okay, now si column ato siyang initialize to 0 and column must be sa man. Si column must be less than the length of your columns. Diba? Okay, so ang atong ibutang diri is si A, our array, and then ang iyahang row nga length. Tama ba ko? Row, yeah. Based sa atong picture 5. 5. Yeah, the length of your row. Okay? Length. Yeah, tama. Okay, so sa length sa atong row, atong i-picture out ha. Okay, so moment ni siya no ang ato ang pag-traverse. Ang saan pag-travel no sa imuhang Java. So niya pag-display. Una, by row. What's the length of your row? Diba? 4. Because we have 4 elements. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, so your index is always less than the length. So, dapat ang imuhang column nga counter is less than sa length sa imuhang row. Pilay length sa imuhang row? 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, so we will now, and then we will now go through each of these. Okay, so your column index should be less than our row length. And then we will increment it by 1. Okay, so diri sa inside, so now we can access now the rows and columns kay nana to sa iyahang sulod no sa ato ang row of column. So now pwede na nato siya ma-display. Okay, so we will now display it. Printf ta. Okay, and then %5t. And then kinsa ni siya? CA row and then column. Okay, tama ba? Okay, so iyahang this for loop is for pwede ta maglibog loop through the columns of the current row. Okay, so each row, each column sa ato ang current row. Okay, and then after niya ma-print ang ato ang row, before siya mo go into the next row, dapat ma-next line siya, no? Dili siya mo sumpay. Ito ang pagka-print. So we will print here a next line. Okay, so one way of printing a next line is print ln. Then we will leave it blank. Or kung gusto dyan ninyo nga taasin yung code, pwede po na. Okay, so mag-print ln lang po. Okay, so our public void, our display array method is now ready for use. Okay, so we will now call it here sa ato ang main method. And let's see kung ihabad yung ma-display ang sulod sa atong array. Okay, so we will now call it display array. And our argument, no? Pag magpasa, mag-call of method, it's called an argument. Pag mag-declare parameter. Okay? Review. Sige, tag-review yan. Okay, and the array. Okay, let's run it. Array 2D. Array 2D. Okay, Java C. Oops, we have an error. Our class array 2D is public, should be declared in a file name array2d.java. Array 2D. Gamay ang ato ang D. Ang akong pagka-save is dako ang iyang D. Kaya na lang atong alistan. Okay. Okay, no? So small details can lead your program not to run. Okay, so nara ato ang multidimensional array. No? We have for row 1, we have 1 and 2. For row 2, we have 3 and 4. Okay, let's proceed. Okay. Now, ingon siya diri, the lengths of the row are not required to be the same kuno. So, dili siya kinahanglan jud nga let's say kung pila iyahang ka row mo ra pud iyahang number of columns. No, dili siya kinahanglan nga equal ang number of rows and columns. No, dili siya kinahanglan nga 2 by 2 lang imong array, 3 by 3, 4 by 4. No, pwede siya nga dili parehas. Okay, so for this example, no, nag-initialize gihapon ta og value, we have two rows. For the first row, we have two columns, and for the second row, we have three columns, no? Morning natay tulo ka values na diri. Okay, so let's try it sa ato ang code, no? Kung mo-display gihapon siya. Okay, so we'll just change this. We will just add 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so natay duha ka columns sa first row and 3 ka columns sa second row. And then, ito siyang i-display. So, parehas ra gihapon. Ingan ra gihapon nato siya pag-display. Okay, so let's run it. Run. Okay. Okay, so the first row, na siya ito ka column, si 1 and 2. And si second row, na siya tulo ka column. Okay? So, pwede siya na dili required nga equal ang number of rows and columns nimo. So, for this example, the dimension of our array is 2 by 3, no? 2 rows and 3 columns. 2 by 3. The value of our m is 2. Value of our n is 3. No? Diba? Ingon siya kaina sa atong statement dere. Okay? The m by n array. Okay? M is for your row and n is for your column. Okay? So, for this example, the value of our m is 2 and the value of our n is 3, which leads to we have a 2 by 3 array. I remember ha? Okay, question tanan. Okay, so that's how you initialize the value of your array, no? For a two-dimensional array. Okay, so pwede po siya maparehas sa ato ang one-dimensional array nga ato siyang first i-define by putting the number inside the square bracket. So a multidimensional array with the same number of columns in every row can be created with an array creation expression. No? So this is what we call the array creation expression. Nga na natawag ni siya og creation expression because of the keyword new. Okay? So, pag mo nga nagkikasay mong code og new, meaning nag-instantiate na siya og new object. Okay? That's why mean siya array creation expression. Okay? So, parehas po sa ito ang one-dimensional array. Our array creation expression is when we create a new array through the new keyword. Okay? Wala ta nag-initialize sa katong nakabutang siya sa curly braces. Okay, so array, multidimensional arrays can also be created by these array creation expression. Okay, and then for the first square bracket, we can specify here the number of rows, and for the second square bracket, you can specify the number of your columns. Okay, so this is now our M and our N. So our array now has 3 rows and 4 columns. Okay, another way, in this case, we use the literal values 3 and 4 to specify the number of rows and number of columns respectively. But this is not required. Programs can also use variables to specify array dimensions because new creates arrays at execution time, not at compile time. As with one-dimensional arrays, the elements of a multidimensional array are initialized when the array object is created. Okay, so diri as an example, we really specified here the figures, no, the 3 and 4. But you can also have it nga variable siya, meaning user inputted ang size sa inyuhang array. Okay, example. Um, Share screen. Okay, so we will now replace this initialization to declaration, no? The array creation expression. So within keyword int, a new int, um, sa to, pila to ang sukod sa ato ang array? 3, 3 by 4. Okay, 3 rows. Ay, happened. 3 rows and we have 4 columns. Okay? So, kung i-display na to atong array, kay wala man tayo initialize ng mga value, by default, for numeric, naka 0 na siya. Kung boolean, naka false. Okay? So, let's see sa iyahang i-display. Now, with the given creation of our array. Okay, so we have here a 3 by 4 array, no? 3 rows and 4 columns, no? Naka-0 siya tanan by default. Kung numeric ang ato ang data type, by default 0 na siya. Kung boolean, naka-false. Okay, let's get back. And then, PowerPoint. Okay, so, pwede po daw siya nga i-user inputted nato ang ato ang um, kanang atong dimension sa atong array, no, para si user ang magbuot kung pila ang say dimension sa iyahang two-dimensional array. Okay, so let's try nga naka variable type ang ato ang sukod sa atong array. Okay, so let's say mayon ta diri mo prompt ta sa atong user. We will import first our scanner because we will ask an input from the user, import java.util.scanner. Okay. Okay, kung kang NetBeans niya, automatic ra niya i-import kung magamit ka og scanner. Okay, so ang result ana, dili kay mong kadumdum kung sa dayto dapat ipang-import. Okay, so kay Primera pa man ninyo, so you just have to familiarize first. Okay, so we will instantiate a scanner class inside. We will name it as input. And then we will ask the user for the size of the desired size of our array. Okay, system data. Okay, we'll just copy this so we can speed up our discussion. And we'll ask for the row, a column. Okay, so try also this one ha, and then see for yourself if you kung moran siya sa inyong apps na ginagamit. Okay, kay basig dito na mo mang reklamo nga ma'am dili man mo gawas sa result pagting exam na kay pagting exam na pud ay nagtry og program. Okay, mailhan man na. Okay, so try it out also. So as our discussion goes on, kamo po ninyo hang gisunod kung unsa akong gina-type. Okay? Kaya advantage for this, kaya recorded, pero ninyo ma-playback. Okay, naka-column. So what we will put here is the rows, then the columns. Okay, so let's run, 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 run. Java C meaning Java compiler. Okay, how many rows do we want? Let's say we want four rows and three columns. Okay, so di ba mo iyahang display. Okay, so mo na siya ang advantage or feature kung mag-array creation ta, no? Wala na ka-initialize ang um, ato ang number of rows and columns. Okay, let's proceed. Okay, this is the last. Okay, so this example is a creation of an array with the different number of columns. Kaya di ba gaina sa atong pag-initialize like this one, pwede ta maka-initialize nga lahi iyahang number of rows and columns, no? Dili equal na siya 2 rows, iyahang columns 3 lang. So how do we do that in using the array creation expression? Okay? So, ang iyang gibuhat diri is first, yeah, the array creation does not involve leave blank lang nato ang ato ang column or our n value, no? Leave blank. It's possible. Okay? And then, pag abot diri si B0, meaning our B row 1, yahang createan og another index nga 5, meaning this is now the value of your column. Nga ang iyaha daw row 1, first row is na ay 5 ka column and the second row is na ay 3 ka column. Okay, so this is just how you um, create an array through the array creation expression nga different ang iyahang size sa row and columns. Okay? So you just leave the column blank, specify the number of rows, and leave the column value blank. And then ilahiraday ninyo siya o create, no? Using the creation expression, no? Kaya napuntay ni. Okay, so let's try it out. Um, ay, so if i-leave blank lang yun nato siya, no? Si user atong pabuton sa column, i-comment ko ni siya. Okay. I-leave blank na nato siya. And then, nato siya uh, sa first row, no? Zero man ang index sa ato ang first row, di ba? So, new, int, and then, pila ka column atong gusto? Let's say, 4. And then, for the second row, is new, and how many columns do you want it to have? Let's say 6. Okay, so dapat ang mo print karon and then call the display array method. So ang mo print karon has a 4 2 rows, and the first row has 4 columns and the second row has 6 columns. Okay, let's see. We want how many rows? Two lang, no? Kaya walang to atong na-define. Okay, so there are 4 columns and 6 columns for the second row. Okay, how about sa imuha? Ni-run na? Gitry na nimo? Ni-run sa imuha? What are the errors? Fix it. Okay, so before you proceed to the next step, okay, you can stop the video for this time. Okay, how about let's create a method that will assign values, no, sa ilaha, sa kada element sa ato ang array. So we will create another another method. Okay, so let's create a method. Okay, bisag kinsa ra ang pwede mauna nga method ha, anyway nara na siya mag-matter sa inyong pag-call sa method. So it doesn't matter inside plus star, but favorably mas maayos siya kung kinsay mo pinaka recent nga gihimo nga method siya ang sunod sa main, or it's either si main ang nasa pinakaubos ni mga method. So the arrangement does not matter, kay mag method call raman gihapon ta. Okay, so let's name it assign value. Okay, and then the same gihapon, mag-parameter ta og a two-dimensional array R. Okay. And then we will just recycle this one. No, kay parehas naman ta nga mo traverse ta on each of the rows and columns of our array. Okay, but ato lang siyang alisdan diriya. So let's make it nga ang kada row sa ato ang array. This is the row. Ma'am, balik-balik lang yung pangan sa imuhang variable. It's okay. Because ang variable nga sulod sa imuhang method is exclusive for that method. So, dili mo yung si Java nga, uy, balik-balik imuhang variable name, no? Already defined. Dili siya. As long as, because it's only exclusive within your method. So, kini siya nga row nga mo gi-declare diri, exclusive lang ni siya ni nga method. Pag otro na akong declare diri og the same name nga row, exclusive ra pud ni siya diri nga method. Okay? And then let's make it ang times 2 siya. Ay, plus na lang kay ma-zero man gihapon ko ato i-times. Say 3. Okay, so dapat na anay sulod karon nga value ang ato ang array. Okay, so ato siyang primero tawagon before nato siya display. Ato sa siyang assignan. So ato una nato tawagon si assign value before ni display value. Okay, itong ipasa si our argument is array. Okay, nakasunod ba og code? Okay, let's run it. Oh, we have an error. Okay. We didn't change the name of our array. Ato man din gi-change atong parameter. Kaya ito ra ni siyang gikopya. So, dapat kini ay si R na pod ni siya. Way, si R man ato ang i-parameter dari. R man ang pangalan, di ba? So, R pod siya dari. Okay. So, parehas ba taog error? Okay. So, fix it and then run it again. Okay, so how many rows? Two. Okay, so na siya isulod, na 4 siya and then 6. Okay, so by 3, kay giplasan lang man nato siya og 3. Kay di ba 0 to ang sulod kay na, so plus 3 man na siya. Na siya isulod ng mga 3. Okay, ni-run na ba sa imo ha? Ni-run na. Okay. So kung ni-run na, that's good. Okay, so now let's proceed. Now, I'm introducing to you here, we will have a case study of our grade book using two-dimensional arrays. Okay, so I will discuss this, the code for this program in the next video. But for now, try to answer it first, no? Kung kaya ba. So you will create a program. You will use a 10 by 3 array for 10 students' grades on 3 exam. 10 by 3 array, meaning you have 10 rows and 3 columns, no? Our M and our N. And you will also have 5 methods on your program. You will have a minimum method, get maximum that will get the highest grade, the get average ang pangalan, follow the naming convention ha. Kini jud ang ipangan sa inyong method. Determines a particular student semester average. And this one, the output bar chart, outputs a grade bar chart for the entire semester students' grades. And you will output the grades. Outputs the array in a tabular format along with each student's semester average. Okay, so muna ang sulod sa inyong sa atong program. We have 5 methods and a 10 by 3 array. Okay, a clue. So this is now the clue. This is how you declare the needed array for this program. Okay, so and this is now the desired output. No, nakatabular siya. Nakatabular ang kada row. No, di ba? This is one row, one row, one row. Okay, nakatabular ta and then display nimo ang minimum o maximum and then the bar chart. Okay? So, gamit din siya ang two-dimensional. So, for us to display tabular formats, we have to use the two-dimensional array. Okay? So, before proceeding to the next video, nga ako ipakita ang code, ani, you try to answer it for yourself. And then, comment yes kung nakuha ninyo siya, kini siya nga output without viewing the next video. Comment yes to this post. And then, and if wala, comment no but try. Okay. Comment no, but try. Kaya kung wala dyan siya na dyan siya na kaya. Diri ani nga post ni video. Okay, so see you on the next video in making the code for this program.